Matthew Karnitschnig, Berlin bureau chief, looking extremely dapper.
Thank you.
And dare I say, looking almost French. That's meant as a compliment.
I'm not sure you're.
I mean, as you're looking kind of dapper. You kind of have a sort of
you're
suave.
More of a friend of the Germans.
You got a suave continental feel to you. Now, just in the last couple of days, Sarkozy. We have the elections in France, in which Sarkozy didn't do great. Had the Dutch government falling apart. I don't think either of those were huge surprises, were they? The question is, can austerity work in Europe? Or will the German people be forced to pick up the bill? It's a big question for you, Matthew.
I think it has to work, because if it doesn't work, the euro will implode.
Right.
The question is, how do you calibrate it in a way that you don't thrust these really weak economies even deeper into recession? And some would argue that right now, the types of austerity that's being demanded of people in places such as Portugal or even Spain is too much, that they need to dial it back and be a little bit more accommodating.
The European markets, they've been having a rough few weeks, particularly bad day today. It hasn't been great, just generally speaking, in Europe. And the concerns have been focused on Spain. Now, there's no real news here. What I mean by that is Spain has had tremendous problems with their banks for years, at least 5 or 6 years. I mean, huge problems, saddled with bad real estate loans in the Spanish banks. And we're now in a situation where across Europe, because we have a lot of coalition governments, whenever there's an unhappy minority partner, such as in the case of the Netherlands, they can, kind of put the entire euro experiment into a tizzy. Are we overreacting right now, or do you think things are tough and bad and getting worse in Europe?
I think things are tough and bad, but I think you need to look at the reasons and look at the individual countries and what's going on. And the Netherlands remains one of the pillars of the Eurozone. It is one of the healthiest economies. It is still AAA rated, so you can't really put them in the same category as a country such as Portugal or Spain.
But they are susceptible, in this case, Geert Wilders, who is a member of the ruling coalition, kind of far-right Eurosceptic party. When he pulls out of the government falls.
Well, he wasn't actually in the government. He was supporting some of their policies, and they relied on him to get majorities on a lot of issues. But I take your point, but the issue in the Netherlands, that could have come to a head even if this crisis weren't happening. This is sort of the normal political back and forth that you have in these parliamentary democracies. The problem is that now it's taking on this greater importance because of everything else that's happening. But if you look at the 10-year yield in a place like the Netherlands, it is still way below what you're seeing in Spain.
Well, it's over 6% or so in a country like Spain. What is the perception, if we were to travel to Germany or travel across Europe, as you frequently do, would we see any tangible signs of the economic slowdown or the cost of austerity? I'm not talking about going to a place like Greece, where I'm sure you would see it on a street corner. I'm talking about in continental Europe.
No, the answer is no. I don't think, unless you really look for it, you're not going to see many signs of it. You might see it in Spain in some areas, you might see it in Portugal, or you definitely would see it in Portugal. But if you go to Germany, if you go to the core Europe, you're not going to see any signs. Germany is actually doing quite well. The economy is booming. And even the Netherlands, they're in a recession right now, but it's not exactly, Greek-like conditions or anywhere near that.
Right. Now, if we turn to France, which had the weekend elections, the expectation is, or at least the headlines were, this was a blow to Sarkozy or something like that. Sarkozy still has a shot at winning this presidential election, doesn't he? Not really.
Not really.
I
think a lot of people think that he doesn't have a shot because of the calculus that you have to do with the fringe parties in France and how they're going to, the supporters of those parties are going to vote in the second round.
Right. So would if I went to Angela Merkel's office right now and asked her, what about France? Would she say, it's really bad? This guy Francois Hollande is nothing but trouble.
Well, I think she's definitely disappointed. She threw her weight behind Sarkozy, and in a way that was fairly unprecedented for a German leader, and he lost. But I think it's not in the interest of Germany, it's not in the interest of France for the two countries to have a contentious relationship. So I do think that after the second round that they will kiss and make up and they will go forward. The problem is that France is not going to back Germany's very strict austerity strategy. They're going to want, Hollande will probably demand more growth-friendly policies. The question is, what are those? And there's also a question of, is it really realistic for France, as he's suggesting, to relax some of its fiscal consolidation promises?
Right. Is Holland seen in Germany as big trouble, or kind of like...
you got to get the French, it's Hollande.
Yeah, you see, I told you, you're wearing the suit, you got the sideburns, you know how to do it. Yeah. How is he perceived in France? In Germany, rather.
In Germany, I think he's sort of seen as a center-left figure. I don't think he's seen as dangerous in any way. He's very similar to the center-left in Germany, the Social Democrats. So these are the grand parties in Europe that have ruled the continent for the last 60 years or so.
Final question. How are you feeling about Europe right now? Are you feeling optimistic? Yeah, it'll be a grind, but they'll get through. Or do you think the grand European experiment is still kind of threatened by forces it can no longer control?
I think it's definitely threatened. I think the euro is threatened. I think there's a very real possibility that the euro could dissolve, and it could be catastrophic.
So you would put yourself more in the skeptical camp that all these countries would be able to get it together.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you think about it,
are you saying that because you live in Germany?
No, I'm thinking about it because if you look at the hurdles that they have to get over in the coming months, it's very hard to see why an investor, for example, why a rational investor would buy Spanish debt right now.
Well, maybe not Spanish debt, but maybe a European oil company like Shell that's giving you, a yield of 5% or something like that.
Right.
Well, it's not really all that different, right? Is it?
Well, it's different because it's the sovereigns now that need to raise billions and billions, tens of billions of euros in the coming months and years in order to continue to fund these deficits. So that's really where the challenge is going to be. And you can't just continue to cut.